Be honest with me for a second. Do you feel more like yourself when you're completely alone than you do lying next to the person that you love the most? If that landed somewhere uncomfortable, stay with me because there is a reason for it. And it's not that you're broken, and it's not that you picked the wrong person. The thing that lets a lot of autistic people hold a relationship together might be the exact same thing that's quietly hollowing it out. Oh, and for our single and asexual and aromantic viewers, this video isn't only about romantic relationships. It's about anyone that you're close to. A partner, yes, but also friends, family, the people that you live with. If you're newly identified and only here for the dating angle, stick around because the mechanism is actually the same wherever it turns up. Hey friends, I'm Mike, a late identified autistic adult, and today we are talking about masking in relationships. By the end, you'll know what masking actually is, why we do it hardest with the people closest to us, what it costs, and how to start dropping it without wrecking the relationship in the process. And if you've ever felt like the version of you your partner fell for is not quite you, this video is for you too. Because masking is a survival skill, and it can quietly turn being close to someone into performance. Fast recap because I already have videos on what masking is and why we do it, and these are linked in the description below if you want more masking content. The short version is then that masking in the context of autism is the suppression of your natural autistic responses and the swapping in of ones that you've learned will go down better. Researchers call the whole umbrella camouflaging, and they split it into 3 types. First, compensation, which is the scripting and the strategies of copying holistic social norms. Then we have masking. Confusingly, it's the same word again, and this is like the forcing of eye contact and the stilling of your body language. And assimilation, that horrible background hum of, am I performing the right face dance right now? Am I doing the right thing? This is not me, I'm trying to blend in. These terms are predominantly from Laura Hull and colleagues and the measure that they built in 2019. In one of my previous masking videos, I talked about scuba diving. That is that underwater, you have to track your buoyancy, your air, your depth, and your buddy all at once. And all of those different tasks, they quietly eat at your attention. Masking is similar to that, except that the tank never comes off and you're running it at a dinner party. You're not a broken neurotypical, you're a whole autistic person just happening to do a very expensive impression of one. Why do we do it? Why do we put ourselves through it all? And here's the bit that really surprises people. Why do we often do it more with the people that we love the most? The driver is a feeling. Transactional analysis, which I'll come back to, calls it a life position. And the one that a lot of us absorb very early on is the life position called, I'm not okay, you are okay. Now, everyone else seems to have been handed the manual that we didn't get and just gets on okay socially, while you might feel like you're missing out or falling behind or struggling. So you learn to perform acceptable. And you crank that performance up wherever acceptance matters most. With a stranger on a train, you can afford to be a little bit odd. With the person whose love or support or companionship you are terrified of losing or you're dependent on, the stakes feel enormous, so the mask goes on hardest in exactly the place that you would most want to take it off. Which is why the work does not start with your partner or your loved ones or your friends. It starts on your own. You cannot show someone the real you if you've lost track of who that is. And after years of automatic masking, a lot of us genuinely have. So the first move is often much quieter and has to be more selfish than people expect. Working out who you really are and what you actually like and what you actually feel. What you want when there is no one to perform for and nothing to get right. No audience, no script, and just you finding out which preferences were even yours to begin with. Which, as it happens, is exactly where today's sponsor comes in. Grab a cup of tea and move whichever cat is sitting on you, because today's video is sponsored by Balessa, who we've now worked with 4 times, and the autistic cats keep asking them back, which I think officially makes it a channel tradition. Autistic people will research anything. 40 browser tabs deep into a new kettle purchase, easy. But ask what we actually enjoy rather than what we've learned to perform, and it often goes quiet. Self-exploration is just field work on yourself, a special interest you are allowed to have as an adult with or without a partner. which is where Bellessa comes in. Their air vibe works 2 zones at once, from 0 to 5, which is a great feature because one person's sensory heaven is another person's fire alarm. The thump does exactly what the name says. It thumps and vibrates and suctions for good measure. Both live in these very pretty charge cases, which are discreet enough to pass as a glasses case, if I still wore them anyway, on your bedside table. Both are waterproof and amazingly well made. For the couples out there, the Halo 2 is strong, quiet, and designed to amplify pleasure for both parties, with 5 vibration speeds, and it is also rechargeable and waterproof. Everyone wins something in this giveaway, either a free toy or gift card. The link is in the description and pinned comment, so go and treat yourself. Right, so we mask to keep the peace and to get by. The problem is what it is doing to us the whole time that we're doing it. And there is a measurable reason that you are running on empty by 6 in the evening. Let me show you the machinery. Masking is not free. It runs on the same fuel that everything else needs. Some people call it spoons, some people call it spell slots, others just use battery metaphors. But whatever metaphor makes sense to you, masking burns a lot of it. Masking burns metaphors. Maybe we should be thankful that all this expended energy isn't somehow contributing to climate change. Researchers writing about autistic burnout describe masking as a conditioned or sustained load, which is a thing that you keep doing in order to function in the world and that your nervous system pays for the whole time, whether or not anyone else can see it. Think about what's happening when you mask through a conversation. You're monitoring their face, you're scripting your next line, you're decoding tone and subtext in real time, holding your stims still so that your hands or the rest of your body doesn't give you away, and all of that at once on top of an actual conversation. Of course you're knackered by the evening. You've been doing I don't know if it's 2 jobs at once. I was thinking 2 jobs at once, so it's actually more than 2 jobs at once. For years, every conversation that I've ever had has meant, and still does, been tracking my own face. Am I doing the right face dance? Is it proportionate? Am I matching the energy, my voice, my hands, my eye contacts, what the other person's saying, what I'm supposed to be feeling? So much going on that I couldn't have told you afterwards what's actually been said. Now, picture running all of that, not with a stranger on the train, but across the dinner table from the person that you love every single evening. In the back of my journal from last year, I've actually got a post-it note that just says WWJD. It's not what would Jesus do, it's what would James do. A mate of mine from years ago, he has a gloriously no-nonsense way with people. I had a meeting coming up that I knew would be really confrontational, so I scripted it line by line. I thought about every branch it could take, and I borrowed his entire personality in order to get through it. That's masking too. The technical name there is called compensation, and it's the exact same machinery that you run when you rehearse how to raise something with your partner so that it lands just right. If you stack a second thing on top of that, roughly half of all autistic people also have Alexithymia, which is a difficulty reading and naming your own emotions. So the pooled figure is about 50%. Against around 5% of non-autistic people. That figure, by the way, is from Kinnaird and colleagues in 2019. As normal, my references are always in the description. Think about what that does to a relationship. The masking plus the alexithymia, right? Your partner or your friend says, just tell me how you feel. And the true answer is sometimes, I don't know yet. And then give me an hour, I'll let you know. I put masking on top of that, performing an emotional fluency that you might not even have yet. It's exhausting partly because, well, speaking for myself, I'm just making it up as I go. The flip side to that as well is that alexithymia is the feelings that you can't find, and emotional masking is hiding real ones that you can. One thing I do is I jump a lot, I move my body a lot, I clap my hands when I'm really happy, my mother does exactly the same, and somewhere before high school, I quietly stopped doing that. Started sitting on my hands because I'd absorbed this idea very quickly that showing big, obvious happiness, it's not cool. Teenagers don't do that. They bully people who do, ferociously. Like last summer, a dolphin and her calf literally breached the water right in front of me, and I jumped and clapped and ran to fetch the people I was with to come and have a look. And that's the version of me that years of masking has taught me to hide. Picture what that does at home. You flatten delight as well as distress, and the person who loves you only meets this kind of grey, sepia, muted version of you, an edited version of you. They never get to meet the real one who claps when they see dolphins. There's another mechanism here, which I'm going to bring in. It's monotropism. This is the idea that autistic attention tends to run best when allowed to work on one channel at a time. Now, you know what that feels like whenever you're in a flow state and time just flies by without you even noticing. Autistic people tend to focus their attention in a monotropic manner versus allistic or non-autistic people who tend to have a more polytropic attention style, thinking about many things, working in many domains at once. Mask a monotropic thinking style and you will force yourself into an unnatural split of attention. And that's a big part of why it feels draining and why being yanked out of focus mid-flow feels jarring rather than just annoying. I think a large part of this idea of PDA or pathological demand avoidance, I think that can be explained by this in part. Something more like interruption aversion, which is a lot more rational than just saying, irrationally I have PDA. Like, I have a whole video on monotropism linked in description below. I also have one on PDA as well. That's also linked in the description below too. Remember the question from earlier? Who masks the most? If you spend any time in this corner of the internet, you'll have the answer probably loaded already. Women, AFAB, autistic women, masking more than men, has been the headline for a little while now, and the research does tend to lean that way. Cook and colleagues gathered 18 studies. 12 found that autistic women camouflage more than men. 6 found no real difference. And not one found men masking more. So far, so expected. But look again at the middle number. A third of those studies found no meaningful gap at all. The pattern of women masking more than men is real and it's very common, but it's nowhere near as universally true as a headline might make it sound. So if you're an autistic bloke who's quietly masked himself into the ground, the data isn't necessarily calling you imaginary or some rare exception to the rule. 6 out of those 18 studies are standing right next to you. My honest read is that plenty of men mask every bit as hard and often get overlooked for the exact same reason so many of us got missed at diagnosis. We usually tell the story about kids socialised as girls, conditioned harder to be agreeable and to blend in. But plenty of kids socialised as boys were handed exactly the same script. Let me show you how this plays out in a room, using a couple of old transactional analysis games, because they describe this stuff almost too well. First one. Eric Byrne called it, "Why don't you? Yes, but." Now here's the autistic relationship version. You are overwhelmed. Instead of saying that, the mask says, "I'm fine." Your partner, who can tell that you're not fine, starts offering help. Have you tried this? What about that? Every suggestion gets a yes, but that won't work. Yes, but I've tried that. Round and round until they feel useless, you feel unheard. The actual need never once gets said out loud. This game works the other way too, and it usually ends when one person explodes with anger or resentment. A lot of autistic people, me included, will hear someone we love describe a problem and immediately reach for a fix. Have you tried doing it this way? Why not just leave the job, leave the situation? When what they actually wanted was for us to sit with them and hold space for them. It cuts the other way too. Picture telling your partner that a noise or a smell is genuinely distressing you and getting back, "Well, it doesn't bother me." Technically, it's a reply, but it lands like a doctor who tells you that your results are normal while you're sitting there in pain. And the reason I link this with masking is pretty simple. The mask is the thing that stops you saying the true sentence early. Instead of saying adult to adult, "I'm overwhelmed," you say, "I'm fine." Instead of "I need a plan," you say, "Whatever you want." Instead of "that noise is hurting me," you say nothing and then just try to endure it. So your partner or friend is forced to work with bad data. They can see that you're struggling, but the words you're giving them are all good, so they start guessing and they offer fixes that you don't want. You might bat them away, they might offer more, you bat them away harder. And this is the yes but loop. Two people trying to connect, but the mask has put a fog machine, I guess, between the feeling and the sentence. There's a second masking layer inside the game. A lot of the yes but answers are also performance. They could be adapted child keeping the peace by rejecting help politely instead of naming the need directly, because direct need feels risky. The game is not necessarily a character flaw, but it could be a learned survival skill that it now backfires and traps you. Byrne called this game Now I've Got You, You Son of a Bitch. The short version, masking does not make the conflict disappear, it defers it and concentrates it. You might swallow the small stuff, swallow it again, smile through it, and then one slightly too loud comment about the dishwasher or something, something's upsetting you, and the whole year's worth of swallowed grievances arrives at once with interest. The mask did not prevent the fight, it's just saving it up for a worse day. It's like causing another person to bottle up resentment until they explode. Masking does not only cost you the relationship that you're in, it can help land you in the wrong one. The part of that trap is something anyone can fall into. Committing to who someone might be instead of who they actually are right now. It's the same mistake we make when we buy tech. We could be marketed or conned into paying for some software features promised on next year's roadmap instead of what's in the box today. The upgrade usually never ships and you're left living with what it really was. Now, when you're lonely, connection can feel scarce. Attention starts to feel a bit like oxygen. And if masking is already morphing you into whatever seems to be the most acceptable version of you, it is a short step to morphing into whatever a particular person seems to want and missing the red flags while you do it. None of this is a uniquely autistic failing. The wider psychology of hiding your feelings says the same thing. There is a 14-day diary study of couples by Impet and colleagues. The people who routinely suppressed their emotions had lower relationship quality. And crucially, so did their partners. And they reported more thoughts of breaking up 3 months later. And a 2024 study by Bing and English found that people who suppress feel less authentic and come across as less likable. Masking is chronic emotional suppression, plus hiding who you actually are and what you actually want and what you actually need, and it's done far more constantly than the average person ever has to. If a bit of everyday suppression does that much damage in the general population, you can see what running it full-time as an autistic person might be doing. The deepest cost people describe goes well beyond tiredness. It's losing track of who you are. When you've masked since childhood, you can reach a point where you cannot tell where the mask ends and where you begin. You go looking for the real you underneath all of it, and you're not sure if there is anyone there, or which bits were ever yours to start with. It's one of the quietly frightening things autistic people talk about, and if you've ever felt it, you're not alone with it. I'll tell you a quick example story from my own life. It's a daft example, really. For the first few years of high school, I performed having no interests at all. And then I performed being a football fan. Now, I've only ever watched one football match. It was on TV and it was horrible. As soccer for those in the United States. My bedroom wall, though, was covered in pull-out posters of Liverpool players that I actually didn't care about. I didn't even know who they were. Because my football-mad dad approved and gave, it was his special interest, and it gave us something to talk about. There was nothing else we could talk about except football. It was something that school friends, give me something so I could help me relate to people at school. Didn't work. It was draining and quietly depressing, and to this day it gives me the ick, actually, when someone wants to talk to me about the match at the weekend. If you take that one small, weird surrender and multiply it by a few decades and spread it across everyone you're close to, you can see how a person ends up genuinely unsure of which of their likes were ever their own. This is where masking can lead. Autistic burnout, which researchers describe, they define it as exhaustion plus a loss of skills lasting 3 months or more. And notably, the people who study it explicitly warn against teaching autistic people to mask in the first place. I know this place better than I would like to. A few years ago, I let myself get completely run into the ground, saying yes to every exciting trip with no downtime and masking the whole way through, and then I crashed hard. It was not just being tired, my skills went, and things that used to bring me joy felt draining, felt nothing. I made a whole film about it called My Autistic Burnout, if you want the long version. The short version is, the bill always arrives, and it's often bigger than you think. Software engineers use a term called technical debt, and it's what happens when, instead of designing something properly, you ship a quick fix meant to meet the deadline and promise that you'll tidy it up later. It works for a little while, but every shortcut carries interest, and eventually you're spending way more time patching and firefighting than you would have spent doing it right in the first place. Masking creates that same kind of debt. You can borrow energy and stability from your future self to get through today's dinner, but tomorrow's meeting, tomorrow's holiday with the in-laws, the bill will show up. It can show up as burnout, it can show up as shutdowns, it can show up as snapping over something tiny because you have been swallowing the big things for months. So if you're sitting there thinking, why am I fine all day and then I fall apart at home? That's the interest payment on the masking energy debt. Although autism is not a mental illness, around 79% of autistic adults will meet criteria for a mental health condition at some point in their lives. Be careful here because that's a lifetime mental health figure, not a masking statistic. And of course we don't know because this is only diagnosed autistic people from a certain sample, blah, 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 blah. It's not a masking statistic. So please do not hear me saying something that I'm not saying. And I'm not saying masking causes all of it, but it just gives you it gives you a sample of what the room looks like. It's the weather that a lot of us are living in. And there is research linking camouflaging to suicidality, even after you account for depression, anxiety, and autistic traits. That's Cassidy and colleagues. And it's association, not destiny. The studies are cross-sectional and self-selected, so I'm not telling you that this is a fixed road and that these are the best quality bits of evidence in the world. This is just generally what the literature says, reasonably broad strokes. But I am telling you that the signal is real enough that the mask is worth taking seriously. That I am saying. There is a smaller, kind of human loop under this. You suppress a need and then you feel guilty for even ever having had that need. So the next time that you try not suppressing it and you say it later, you say it louder, you say it later than you meant to, you say it louder than you intended to, which lands badly and you feel terrible and it makes you more likely to suppress the next one. This is partly fueled by internalized ableism, which drives this kind of behavior. You white knuckle it, you grit your teeth, you stiff upper lip it. The backfire is brutal, and the more you hide of what you need, the less chance anyone ever has of meeting it. Autistic content creator makes a video on masking, sticks it up on YouTube, along with all the myriad of other videos on masking. So what next? What do you do about it? If you've made it this far, the temptation is to hear all of that and decide that you are the problem, you're the broken one who has to perform in order to be tolerable for others. I do want to push back on that because the research doesn't support it. The reframe is called the double empathy problem. You've heard it before. Damien Milton's idea with growing evidence behind it. When an autistic person and a non-autistic person misunderstand each other, the breakdown is mutual. You did not fail to communicate. Two different communication styles met, and neither one is the default correct one. Crompton and colleagues showed that autistic people passing information to other autistic people do so just as accurately as non-autistic people do with each other. The wheels only come off between the groups. If you were to take an interaction down to text only, no face, no voice, the snap judgments against autistic people largely vanish. Style, not substance. The work of being understood in a mixed neurotype relationship or friendship is not yours alone to carry, it is shared. A lot of behaviours that get flagged as red flags in a new partner, mirroring someone's interests, echoing their opinions, suddenly sharing all of their tastes. These are the very same things we do when we mask. From the outside, masking and manipulation can look identical. The only real difference is the motive underneath. A manipulator might mirror you enough to build a rapport to reel you in. An autistic person might be mirroring you to stay safe. Maybe this is why a lot of autistic people seem to end up in relationships with other neurodivergent people, other autistic or ADHD folk in particular. I don't have a clean number on that, it's just an observation. Byrne's whole framework treats these games, these yes buts, the gotchas, the pastimes, as substitutes for the thing that we actually want, which he calls intimacy. And before anyone's mind wanders, Byrne does not mean sex. He means something more specific, and honestly, so much harder to come by. A game-free state. That is intimacy. Two people relating to each other with no act running, no angle, no performance, which, said plainly, is just the opposite of masking. And his rule for getting out of a game is almost annoyingly simple. Someone has to be the person who drops the act first. Stop performing the move and come back to honest, adult, straight communication. That, stripped of jargon, is exactly what unmasking is when it relates to a partner or a friend. Dropping the game and saying the true thing. I'm not going to stand here and say you should never mask again. That would be glib and it would be wrong. Some masks are chosen, some are protective, and sometimes you need one to stay safe. Masking can be liberating and debilitating in roughly equal measure. The goal is not zero masking, the goal has to be selective unmasking around the right people and in places it is safe to do so. The reason to take the mask off in a relationship with someone, the whole point of it is so that the other person finally gets to love the actual you, not the very good impression that you've been keeping up since the day you met. In some respects, meeting a friend or a date for the first time does mean putting your best foot forward. But a relationship cannot live on a first date basis forever. Eventually the mask stops becoming charm and starts becoming distance. Byrne ends his book naming the same game-free intimacy as the reward beyond all games and small talk pastimes, and I think he's right. Intimacy might mean something different to you, but Byrne's definition is an absence of transactional games. No more point scoring, no winners and losers, no keeping a mental spreadsheet about who owes who what and when. Living in adult-to-adult interactions, or playful, not adapted child ones. Byrne's view is that very, very few people will ever experience this intimacy. But I have a slightly different take. Many of the transactional games are neurotypical in nature. And I don't mean that as an insult. I'm not trying to do an Aspie supremacy thing here. I mean this. A lot of everyday, socially normal communication relies on guesswork, status management, and plausible deniability. People imply instead of ask. They hint instead of state. They trade in signals that only work if you assume everyone else shares the same unwritten manual that you do. So a neurotypical person can say fine and mean I'm furious, please chase me. They can say up to you and mean please pick the option that I want. They can say we should do lunch sometime and mean I'm being friendly and not making an actual plan. That whole ecosystem runs on shared intuition without subtext and social punishment. It works well enough inside the majority culture because most people grew up swimming in it. But if you're autistic and in the minority, that same system does two things. It forces you to guess the hidden meaning or mask by copying the expected response. That's why it feels like a performance. Second, it sets you up to look manipulative when you're actually just trying to survive the rules. If you mirror, soften, appease, or say what you think is expected, it can resemble a Byrne-style game from the outside. The difference is motive, and I'm not saying autistic people can't play games. In a game, the hidden move is to win, and in masking, the hidden move is to stay safe. This is why autistic culture can sometimes feel like stepping out of the theatre into the cold, into the rain. It can be a bit brazen sometimes, because we are often blunt. We are often literal. We often share without subtexts or trapdoors. Maybe it's because we don't have the energy for it. I don't know. If you've got a good take on why, or if you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comments section below. But something that is missed from the whole autism as a disorder pathology brigade is that autistic people can connect brilliantly without the performance. It might be connecting over shared interests or being present together doing their own thing and not interacting. If you want to know more about how autistic and neurodivergent people actually do show love, the pebbling, the body doubling, the small ways that we say it without words, that differs from neurotypicals, I made a whole video on it, and it's the one to watch next. Click the card, and I'll see you there. Autistic people describe what love actually feels like with the right person. The word that seems to come up time and time again is effortless, right? Someone who feels like less like a test that you're sitting, someone with whom you just get to be. And it turns out it's more intimate to not fake it. That's the whole video, really. Now, knowing this is one thing. Doing it without accidentally detonating your relationship in the process is another. If you want the groundwork for dealing with some common psychological games, my video on dealing with manipulation in games is in the description below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Click to watch it next. Bye for now.